This is History Myths and Misconceptions. And today's misconception is Persian Wars. There's a number of misconceptions about the Greco-Persian Wars of the 5th century BC, which are surprisingly widespread. They mostly come from the fact that ancient history is taught in schools very briefly, if at all, and nobody goes too much into the details. So usually everyone knows some basic facts about the Persian Wars, which are almost always limited to the Battle of Marathon, the Battle of Thermopylae, and 300 Spartans, and sometimes the Battle of Salamis and the Battle of Plataea. People usually also know that there were Spartans and Athenians. There was no unified Greek state, but instead there were lots of city-states. And Persians at some point decided to invade, at least twice. But Greeks managed to defeat them, and it was a very important event for the Western civilization. Because probably otherwise we'd all speak Persian and live under the despotic rule of tyrants. But instead we all speak Greek right now, and we live in cozy city-states with the Athenian democracy. So the main misconception is the extent of the Greek world and the involvement of Greek states in this war against Persian forces. The Greek world wasn't limited to the boundaries of the present-day Greek state. There were lots of colonies all around the Mediterranean. And what is important for us right now, there were lots of colonies in Ionia, which is the western coast of the present-day Turkey. And this is where the conflicts with Persia started, because these colonies were under Persian control, and some of them decided to start a revolt. And that was one of the main reasons for the Persian invasion to the Greek mainland, so to speak, later on. It was a direct result of the warfare in Asia Minor. And the main reason why Athens became an important travel destination for the Persian forces was the involvement of Athens in the revolt. Athens liked to emphasize that they are related to the Ionian colonies. They were basically their progenitors. They spoke the same group of dialects and belonged to the same cultural group of Greeks. So Athenians sent their army to help the rebels. And this Athenian involvement culminated in the capture of the city of Sardis, which, according to Herodotus, our main source for the events, enraged the Persian king of kings, Darius the Great. So the first invasion of Persians was partially a punitive expedition against Athens, and the vast majority of Greek city-states had nothing to do with it or with the Battle of Marathon. They followed the demands of the Persians and abstained from combat. They were either neutral or more or less allied to Persia. And some of the adjacent territories, like Thrace and Macedon, were essentially controlled by Persia, directly or indirectly. Only Athens and Sparta completely ignored the demands of Darius. They just killed the Persian ambassadors, really. The situation changed a lot after the Battle of Marathon, so the picture was a bit different by the time when the Persians invaded again under Xerxes. The Greek city-states had very complex relationship with pretty much everybody, including, first and foremost, other Greek city-states. But once again, the majority of Greeks abstained from combat, and the main burden fell on the shoulders of Athens and Sparta, plus some allies like Corinthians, Thespians, and so on. Some of the Greek states were not happy about being more or less accomplices of the Persians, but they were sitting more or less quietly. Some non-Greeks were doing interesting stuff as well. For example, Alexander, the king of Macedon, famously was given the intel on the movement of the Persian forces to the Greeks. He was a subordinate of the Persians, but he was just not happy about it. And yes, Macedonians were not considered Greeks, more like Hellenized barbarians, but that's a different subject. And obviously, Persian forces included Greek troops as well. Persia controlled Asia Minor and recruited Greek troops from these territories. The victory of the allied Greek forces, which was more or less an alliance of Athens, Sparta, and Corinth, plus their friends, cemented the status of Athens and Sparta as the two leading forces in the Greek world, which eventually resulted in the Peloponnesian Wars between, yes, Athens and her mostly Ionic allies, and Sparta and her mostly Doric allies. There was a certain cultural and linguistic division between two factions as well, not only purely political. Persia obviously remained an important factor in the politics of the Greek world. The Greek states routinely asked Persians for money and military assistance, and certain high-ranking Greek politicians were seeking refuge in Persia when something went wrong back at home. Themistocles, the architect of the Athenian naval victories at Salamis and Artemisium, continued his career at the service of the Persian king after he was ostracized by Athenians. Later, Alcibiades did the same, twice, kind of. So this situation of the Greco-Persian relationship was in fact much more complicated than it is usually explained. And the Persian Wars obviously were not just the Persians invaded, but Greece heroically prevailed. It is true, but only partially true.